The game goes from 2 tribes to this mass of individuals. How big a shift is it in how you have to look at the game?
Look, I try not to go on major rants in these videos, but this one just really gets under my skin. Please bear with me. Merging in Survivor is a pretty big deal. After all,
no one wants to date someone who doesn't make them merge.
These merges can vary quite a bit in timing, size, and how much fun they make the rest of the season. Jeff often seems super excited by big merges, and I just don't see where he's coming from.
There are so many torches here. It's reflecting parts of tribal council I haven't even seen until tonight.
He seems to imply that having a larger merge is a good thing. That by having so many people at one tribal council, we inherently will have a more chaotic time and the rest of the game will be less predictable. I sort of get where he's coming from. More people does inherently mean there's more going on, and fewer people means there's less room to make exciting things happen. At least on the surface, that's how it would seem. But I'm not convinced. So today I'm going through the common merge sizes. I'll point out their strengths, weaknesses, and see if we can figure out what merge size in general leads to us having a fun season. Let's get into it. Let's start this discussion at one end of the spectrum. What if we just never merged? This happened in Survivor Palau, and I mean, that's a pretty good season of Survivor. Granted, it's a pretty good season of Survivor in part because it defies what Survivor conventionally is, and by not merging every season, we'll be opening ourselves up to losing what makes Survivor Palau so special. But I can technically say never merging is a good idea, which does counter Jeff's fascination with large merges. I'll try to be more genuine in my arguments for the rest of the video. The smallest merged tribe ever was Chuijai in Survivor Thailand, which merged when there were 8 people left in the game. This was in fact a bad idea, for a few reasons. First of all, merging at 8 meant the tribes were extremely locked in. There were no tribe swaps this season. Merging at 8 basically guaranteed a Chuigon steamroll against Sukjai. Even if the tribes had gone in 4-4, I still think we're in for a boring Pagonging after what is probably a rock draw at the final 8. It's too close to the endgame for anyone to be super comfortable causing major shakeups. While around the final 8 is usually the perfect opportunity to make things happen, by merging so late you don't have enough time to form good bonds to get those plans in motion. There was also the fake merge ruining what could have been a pretty fun merge, but we won't worry about that.
You said merge.
Yes.
I certainly didn't say anything to give you that impression, did I?
I think Jeff knew merging at the final 8 was a bad idea, and so he thought to himself, what if we added 1 to the number? Merging at 9 has occurred in All-Stars, Cook Islands, and Gabon. What do you know, it has all the same problems as merging at 8. The tribes are locked in, we're basically at the endgame by now, and there's very little incentive to go against what's working. With bigger merges, you're probably in bigger alliances, meaning not everyone can make it to the end. This incentivizes at least the idea of making something big happen, but smaller merges do not facilitate this. These seasons are all good enough though. I think Gabon is top tier, but I'm not going to pretend the merges in any of them were exhilarating moments of dynamic power shifts between ever-evolving factions. They were all relatively straightforward Pagongings. I will say for the record that Pagonging does not necessarily equal a bad season. Some of my favourite seasons are Pagongings, but it can make large chunks of the merge pretty dire to get through. Alright, so merging at 8 was a bust and merging at 9 was a bust, but what if we merged at the final 10? I'll tell you what, now we're getting somewhere. This has happened way too many times for any sane person to list. So anyway, this has happened in Borneo, the Australian outback, Africa, Marquesas, Amazon, Pearl Islands, Vanuatu, Guatemala, Panama, Fiji, sort of, China, Micronesia, Tocantins, and Heroes vs Villains. And you've got a mix of banger seasons and also Survivor Fiji is there too. Do we count Survivor Fiji? I'm not going to say all of these merges were dynamic either, but we do have a few good shakeups in here. We still saw powerful factions eventually form and dominate, but on average there's more wiggle room for things to happen. That's because there's just a bit more time for those cracks to form before the endgame is locked down. The flip in Marquesas definitely couldn't have happened if the tribes had merged at 8 instead of 10. In fact, I doubt it could have happened if they merged at 9 as well. People generally want to play it safe when it's the first round of the merge. That's an issue we'll come back to later, so having an extra few rounds can make all the difference. I do wonder how merging with 10 people left in the game would work in a 3-tribe season though. You'd probably end up with some very ragged tribes that were desperately wondering when the merge is going to happen. That sounds like fun psychological torment, get onto that, Jeff. Next up we come to what I consider to be the best time to merge, and that's the final 11. This is just a sweet spot for so many reasons, happening in the Philippines, Blood vs Water, Cagayan, and Koh Rong. I was confident it happened more often than that, and I'm kinda disappointed it hasn't. 11 being an odd number solves a problem the other merges have. 8 and 9 don't work because there isn't enough time to form bonds before the endgame is locked in. 10 kinda works, but there's an incentive for the first round to be a standard vote as you're still feeling things out and flipping on your tribe at a deadlock puts you on the bottom. But 11 is different. First, if things go standard, there's an extra buffer round to try and shake things up before the endgame is locked in. Second is that it's an odd number. If the tribes are 6v5 and you're the 6th on your alliance, flipping actually does you no harm in terms of expected placement. Aside from, pissing everyone on your original tribe off, but hey, don't worry about it. But if merging at 11 is so good, surely merging at 12 is even better, right? We've established that every time we add 1 to the merge, it just gets better and better. Well, merging at 12 is happening Samoa? Nicaragua? Redemption Island? South Pacific? One World? Caramoan? San Juan del Sur? Worlds apart. Heroes versus healers versus hustlers? 41, 42, and 44. That's right, for the purpose of this video I'm counting Mergatory as merge, and wow what a difference in quality that is from the merge at 10 and 11 camp. I'm not even saying this as an old head or anything, I kind of really like South Pacific, it just so happens that most of these seasons range from kind of mid to actively not good. There are a few gems in here, but funnily enough one of the better gems, San Juan del Sur, had a quit at the merge, meaning they essentially merged at 11 anyway. What happened here? We were on such a winning formula. Small merge bad, big merge good, right Jeff? I think this speaks to the psychological impact an extra round of Survivor can have on someone. The merge is meant to signify the approximate halfway point of the game. If you merge at 12, you've still got to survive 9 more rounds of voting. Meanwhile, if you merge at 10, you may only need to survive 7 rounds. If you try to make a big move too early, you're simply painting a target on your back, and this leads to boring merges where most are willing to just play it safe. But we'll get to that right now actually, what do you know? Merging at 13 is dumb and I don't like it. It first happened in Survivor Cambodia, and has since happened in Millennials vs Gen X, Game Changers, Ghost Island, David vs Goliath, Island of the Idols, Winners at War, 43, 45, 46, 47, and 48. There is just too much game left to play for a merge at 13 to be a good idea. Prior to the new era, this would only happen in 20-person seasons, so at the very least the players had around 7 rounds to become familiar with their tribe mates. However, all of these seasons had tribe swaps, which meant there may not have actually been enough time with any single person to form deep and meaningful connections with them, unless you were lucky enough to swap onto a tribe with the same person a few times in a row. And in the new era, this is exacerbated even further by 26-day seasons and only 18 players, meaning really, it'll be 5 rounds if you're lucky. This may seem like a good idea because it means you're less loyal to any one person. However, in order to make a big move, especially with as many as 13 players left in the game, you actually need numbers, and it's just challenging to amass many numbers with so many different moving parts going on. Cambodia, Cass was voted out by a group of 10 working together. Millennials vs Gen X, Michelle was voted out 9-4. Game Changers, Halo was voted out by a group of 11 working together. Ghost Island, the Noble One played 5-dimensional chess to get 10 votes against him in one tribal. David vs Goliath, Elizabeth receiving 12 votes against her. Island of the Idols, breaks my heart and I don't want to talk about it, but interestingly enough, it was again a case of players not trying to go against the grain, proving my point further. Winners at War, Wendell was an easy vote. 43, Ellie was such an easy vote, all Gabler had to do was put her name out there and everyone was suddenly like, sure.
By throwing out Ellie's name, I was trying to throw out Ellie's name.
45, everyone went on Caleb. He did get that sick dice roll, but still, easy vote for Jemiah afterwards. 46, Mariah was a 10-1 vote. 47, Rome. Do I need to say more than Rome?
Ich mag dich, aber dein Spiel war wirklich schlecht. Auf Wiedersehen, mein lieber Freund.
And finally, Survivor 48. The first time a 13-person merge had actually some cool stuff happen that I don't fully understand. But almost every single time the tribes merge at 13, the same pattern emerges, because it's simply too early for anyone to trust each other, especially in the new era where they're not together long enough before they're thrown into a massive melting pot. It actively encourages passive gameplay. We've reached critical mass. Merging at 13 does not lead to interesting tribals where there's so many moving parts to keep track of and the layers of duplicity going on in the game run deep. It leads to complacency where players desperately try to make sure it's not them and are willing to go with the most convenient name for the sake of making it slightly further in the game. The combinations of 13 being too early and there being too much game left to play to risk it all at the start means merging at 13 doesn't make sense to me. And I wouldn't even be making this video if Jeff didn't keep trying to tell me how great it was.
Shaheem, what's it like at camp? Because clearly 13 people is a lot of people.
Oh, and in case anyone's wondering, they did once merge at 14 in Survivor Edge of Extinction. They also opted for the safe vote there. Just take my entire previous rant and apply it to this too if you'd like. Well, that was a quick rundown of why different merge sizes pass or fail. I'd love for them to try merging at 11 more often, but I guess if we continue having mergatory, I don't even know what I want in that case. This video was a bit more rambly than I usually do. I just got back from Sydney, I'm very tired, but thanks for listening to my descent into madness. What do you think? What's your favourite merge size? Let me know. Until next time, I've been Henry Hickman Survivor, and I'll see you at the real merge